Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Yeah Right podcast. If you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss any new episodes. Let us know down in the comments who you want to see on the podcast. So recently, the Nashville shooter's manifesto was leaked by Steven Crowder on his talk show, Louder with Crowder. After being hidden for over 7 months since the atrocious attack, the manifesto has been seen by the eyes of millions, or at least 3 pages of that manifesto. There's still much of which has not been released by the police department yet. For those of you who don't know, on March 27th, 2023, a mass shooting occurred on the Covenant School, a Presbyterian church elementary school in Green Hills, which is a neighborhood of Nashville, Tennessee, when a 28-year-old mentally ill Audrey Hale, also, by the way, and I know
there goes the YouTube.
Yep. And former student of the school killed 3 9-year-olds and 3 adults before being shot and killed by 2 Metropolitan Nashville Police Department officers. Here is a minute-by-minute analysis of the shooting. So initially, Hale arrived to the school at 9:54 a.m. At 9:57, Hale sent an Instagram message to an old friend, which, as the friend said, was basically a suicide note. At 10:11, Hale, armed with 2 rifles and a pistol, shot through a set of glass side doors and entered the building. At 10:13, police received a call about an active shooter. When police arrived at the scene, a teacher told the officer that the students were in lockdown, but 2 were missing. Officers entered the building around 10:23, give or take. While clearing the first floor of students and staff, they heard gunshots coming from the second floor. Officers stepped over the victims on the second floor as they made it towards Hale. At 10:25, a 5-member team approached Hale, and 2 officers fired 4 times each. And by 10:27, 14 minutes after the initial 911 call was made, Hale was deceased. In total, Hale shot more than 150 rounds and killed 6 people. 6 people, which included 3 students and 3 staff, were killed at random. 5 were pronounced dead at the hospital, and 1 at the scene. As of April 14th, 2023, police have not publicly disclosed a motive for the shooting, and Hale's surviving writings, including diaries and planned documents initially called a manifesto, were described by police as rambling and empty of any specific political or social issues. So up until just a few short weeks ago, on November 6th or 7th, was it? I believe it was November 6th. So as I was saying, up until just a few short weeks ago, around the 7th or 6th of November, that was the end of the story. But now we know what 3 pages of Hale's manifesto described. And I will now describe the writings to you. Viewer discretion is advised. And I quote, Hale said, "I want to kill you little bunch of little with your white privilege. F you. Going to private schools with those fancy khakis and sports backpacks. With your daddy's Mustang convertibles. F you, little." It really is. It's just utterly disgusting language that's used in this, and sounds just like someone who is, I don't know, schizophrenic or has some like really something majorly messed up with them. Yeah. And another one of her another page of her manifesto stated, "Can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm ready. I hope my victims aren't. I hope I have a high death count." Following the leaking of the pages of the manifesto, the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department released a statement in saying, "I am greatly disturbed by today's unauthorized release of 3 pages of writing from the Covenant shooter. This police department is extremely serious about the investigation to identify the person responsible. This action showed a total disregard for Covenant families as well as the court system, which has controlled the shooter's journals at the present time due to litigation filed earlier this year. It is now pending in Davidson County Chancery Court and Tennessee Court of Appeals. We are not at liberty to release the journals until the courts rule. Our police department looks forward to the ultimate resolution of the litigation concerning the journals. So the thing that I'm a little confused about is I thought the police department said that this was empty and had no social issues tied down to it. When, they're explicitly coming out and saying, Hale came out and said, "Oh, I want to kill you little crackers," which, as you know, is it's slang for white people. And just some utterly disgusting language regarding white people, saying how they have white privilege, and that's why Hale wanted to go out and kill all those innocent children and staff. So, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
So, obviously, that this manifesto was covered up and still hasn't been released to this day because it goes against the left's agenda. The left's entire ideology, their entire philosophy is just based on victimhood. And if you're not in the correct category of victim, they can't comprehend. Literally, they can't comprehend, like, the idea that, you could be a victim or that, you're not the oppressor. And so this manifesto obviously went against their perceived victimhood theme, which is, trans people are the victims. Trans people, as far as that even exists. And that was, of course, the first idea that the media pushed. As soon as this came out, they were like, well, of course, what this lady who thinks she's a man did is terrible. But really, it was this Christian school's fault for not accepting her delusions.
And something else that happened the day after, they declared it as a trans day of, what was it? A trans day of identification or something like that. Yeah. Honoring the transgender shooter who shot up that Christian school, who was targeting white people. What are your thoughts, John?
I don't know. I think this is, the fact that it was covered up is obviously because it goes against the agenda that the left wanted to push. They wanted to push that, this was, they wanted to blame the guns, they wanted to blame the school, they wanted to blame everyone else except for the person who perpetrated the crime. So because they don't want to hold a trans shooter accountable for murdering tons of children. I think what this shows is that this modern leftist agenda they don't care at all about human life unless it's convenient for them. We saw this when Hamas attacked Israel. They didn't really want to cover all the things that were happening to Jews because it doesn't go well with their narrative that Palestine is, a hotbed for terrorism. But I do think ultimately what this shows is that the left doesn't care about human life and whether it gets destroyed unless it is someone that is convenient for them. They're willing to march in the streets for 3 months about George Floyd's death, but then a bunch of Christian kids, white kids at a Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee get shot, and the victim that the media sees, that the left sees, is the person who did it. It just shows you they don't care about human life unless it's convenient for them.
Both of you guys had really good points. So earlier in Hale's manifesto, if you will, she said, and I quote, "There were several times I could have been caught, especially in the summer of 2021. So obviously she's been planning this out for years now. Mm-hmm. And she says how she could have been caught, especially in 2021. What's preventing the police force or the FBI or I don't know, some sort of federal agency from coming and saying, okay, that person obviously has something wrong with them. We're going to go ahead and put them under investigation or do something about it before just being reactionary and waiting for something to happen and then taking action as something horrific's going on. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance came out in response to the releasing of this so-called manifesto and said, "The anti-whiteness movement mainstreamed by the American universities and corporations has blood on its hands. The people want to know the truth, but they're simply trying to downplay it and sweep it all under the rug. Why is mainstream media, Nashville police, and the court system trying to hide this?"
Well, like we said before, I think it goes against their narrative that, white people are the oppressors and everyone else is the oppressed. It also is inconvenient for them, the fact that this was clearly a very, very, to call them mentally ill is to put it lightly. This was a very deranged individual who just wanted to kill people and had hatred in their heart. And this person was angry and should have been in a mental hospital or some sort of psych ward or some sort of holding facility so that they couldn't go out and do this. What I think this shows is, I think the fact that they wanted to cover it up is they didn't want this manifesto leaking because it went against the agenda they were trying to push. Whenever a mass shooting like this happens, the media always figures out one of 2 or 3 agendas. Either they blame Republicans, they blame the guns that were used to perpetrate it, or they blame just anyone else that seems convenient to them that all of a sudden in the situation seems relevant. You've seen this in many different instances over the years, but I remember when this shooting first happened, it was people were either talking about gun control or they were talking about, transgender people aren't represented enough or something like that, which no matter how much you cater to those sorts of people, the LGBTQ left, no matter how much you cater to them, that's not going to prevent them from doing stuff like this. This was a deranged individual. This was someone who, you look at them, you look at what they did, and you're like, no normal person would do this. So this, I think ultimately the reason why this is being covered up is simply because it does not fit the agenda that the left chose to use when covering or when talking about this particular shooting. And also for the past 6 months or so since the shooting, and since the police chief said basically that they don't have much more information about, what the motives of the shooter were, ever since then the left has completely pretended like it never happened for the most part, unless they wanted to make some sort of point about, we need awareness of trans people. They might have mentioned it then, but it's all about an agenda.
So all that was released was these 3 pages, and I feel like it's quite clear, because I'm sure there's, dozens of other pages to this person's manifesto that it just goes way even more outlandish than what was released. So who even knows what else they're trying to hide from us?
Oh yeah, definitely. And the fact that they're so tight-lipped about it and they don't want to, the easiest thing for them to do now would be, now that this section of it has been leaked, they could easily just make the whole entire manifesto public, and it would, people would not be making up conspiracy theories about it, because when you deprive the people of information, you're asking them to just sit and theorize and try and figure out what happened. The best way they could have handled this is just, as soon as the manifesto leaked, they would have been like, okay, we're going to make the whole thing public. The fact that they're not shows that there's something else in there that they want to hide from us.
They're using the excuse that it's the family, so we don't want to have them relive this horrendous action. Which, okay, that's kind of valid, but at the same time, if you are in the shoes of a parent who went through this horrible action, me personally, I would prefer to know, like, what was the motive behind this deranged person.
Yeah, and I mean, they've released other manifestos before.
Yeah.
The Charlottesville shooter.
The New York City subway guy.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
there was, I mean even the guy in New Zealand.
But the thing is with those, it matches perfectly in line with
Yeah.
with the
With
media's
their
agenda,
agenda.
the neoliberal agenda. Yeah.
Right, because those people were admittedly they were white supremacists. They were also deranged. You know, no normal person could do this. But the problem with this is, it goes against the left's, you know, trans, LGBTQ nonsense agenda, because the left hates traditionalism. The left hates Christians. The left hates, you know, white people. Even to a lesser degree, like the left hates Asians. You know, they hate.
Well, because they're being wrapped up with white people now.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Zach is right. Like, there are some people who just like wrapped up Asians with white people and say like, they're basically the same. Like,
Right. That's kind of messed up now that
Yeah.
I think about it. But, no, what you said there, you pointed out, I believe there was a shooting in Buffalo, New York.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I was talking about.
Where
yeah.
there was that guy who was, I think it was a white supremacist guy, went into a store and shot it up, killed a lot of, I believe they were all black people, including one off-duty cop.
Are you talking about the guy who live streamed the entire
Yeah.
thing? Yeah.
Yeah, and so, and the media had no problem with, they had no problem with leaking that guy's, or not leaking, but releasing that guy's manifesto. But they're really, really quiet about this Nashville shooter. It's like, it makes me really curious, like, what exactly are they trying to hide here, and why are they trying to hide it? I would assume there's plenty of stuff in there that goes against the agenda they want to push and the narrative they want to push, and that's why they're dragging their feet about letting it out.
Yeah, this is anti-white racism, like in the flesh. And then following the releasing of these documents, Steven Crowder also came out and broke the following information. He said, breaking news. 7 Nashville officers were placed on admin leave in connection with the release of the hashtag Nashville Manifesto. The powers that be more concerned about finding the leaker than they are about the contents of the Audrey Hill anti-white manifesto. Interesting.
so obviously the contents of this manifesto are just like outrageously disgusting, and yet the left is concerned with, you know, hunting down these officers who, you know, they're not involved in covering this up. They're just, you know, they're just deputies and police officers and sheriffs doing their job. It's you know, the bureaucracy at the top of the deep state, if you will. And I don't use that like, you know, a bunch of, you know, people in masks hiding in a dark room. It's just, you know, the leftists and the uppermost levels of the bureaucracy who all have the same agenda. And they're more concerned with hunting down these Nashville officers. And I mean, you've seen leaks in other places in the government where they're suspiciously less motivated to find and punish the leakers. I mean, back in 2022 or maybe 2021, I don't even remember at this point, the Supreme Court Dobbs decision leaked, and I don't recall anybody ever being you know, fired for that. I could be wrong. And they investigated, but, you know, they investigated. Like,
Yeah, I mean, that when they say they investigated, either it means they're going and they're hunting down the person who did it, or they're just saying they're investigating to get off the hook. And you're absolutely right about that. The Dobbs decision, the guy who leaked it, as far as I know, there was no mugshot of him. There was no him getting fired, as far as I recall. So that's another example of the bias there, that they didn't really want to go after that guy because he was he or she, I can't even remember if it was a guy or
Well, I don't. We don't know.
but whoever it was, they weren't too worried about going after that guy and finding them. Like they really didn't care when it came to that, because it was a person who was going along with their agenda. Whereas with this, these leakers are exposing the truth that the left doesn't want people to know, that the deep state doesn't want us to know about, and so of course that person's they're going to go after that person and or that group of people, and they're going to hunt those people down, and they're going to ruin their careers because they dared to stand up for what was right in a situation where that was not convenient to the powers that be.
And let me just make clear that leaking a Supreme Court decision is far more egregious, like orders of magnitude more egregious than leaking this manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first Supreme Court decision to ever be leaked, if I recall correctly. I mean, like, these are the done in the utmost like secrecy, not like, I mean, it is guarded, but it's more done in the utmost level secretly, just as a point of honor. And how convenient that that decision was leaked of all the decisions, because the leftists had an agenda. And I'll leave it there.
All right, we're about to wrap things up, but before we do so, would you guys go ahead and, I don't know, give your final inputs, final takes, if you will?
Yeah, so the Nashville shooting, point A, the lady who did this was deranged. No normal person even considers this for the briefest moment in their life. Point 2, they covered up her manifesto, which was, anti-white, anti-Christian, anti-rich person too, I guess. Because the left has an agenda of victimhood, and if you don't fit in the victim category, then sorry about your luck. And then they invented a new story to fit their victimhood agenda that the media immediately leapt to. I don't even think that the media was necessarily instructed by the FBI. I don't think that if FBI whispered in CNN's ear that this is what you're going to report, because they didn't need to. This is what the media immediately leapt to. That sure, what this lady did, it's a terrible crime, and we regret the loss of lives of the children, the adults, and the staff. But the real people at fault here are the Christians, because they didn't accept this lady's transgender identity, and they pushed her over the edge. And the thinly veiled threat that if we don't accept the transgenders, if we don't accept the LGBTQ agenda, that we're going to push more of them over the edge. That's not so thinly veiled a threat, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, and I think also what this really shows is the media will deceive people no matter what, and also the left and the people in power. You can call them the deep state, call them the powers that be, whatever you want to say. Those people are colluding with the media and with the government and with whoever else is involved in any kind of situation like this to try and push a particular narrative, and they want to push a particular narrative that suits their agenda and that advances their goals, to ultimately tear down basically everything that Western civilization was built on. And if that means that they're going to cover up a shooter's manifesto when normally they wouldn't, or it means that they're going to lost my train of thought. Whether it means that they're going to make thinly veiled, like you said, thinly veiled threats, they'll do it. They will do whatever they have to do in order to push their narrative and their agenda. Just the fact that this was covered up in this way is absolutely despicable, and we ultimately have to condemn it, because if this keeps going, if this continues to happen, God only knows where this country's going in a few years if this kind of stuff keeps happening. Every time there's a tragic loss like this that goes against the media's agenda, if this keeps happening every time, then there's some bad things down the pipeline, I think. But that's my take.
Well, it says in Isaiah 5:20, "Woe unto them who call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." I feel like that pretty well explains what is going on today in America.
Yeah, and especially in this particular case with the Nashville shooter.
Absolutely. Well, that'll be it for the episode. Again, please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. In that case, God bless.